In a bustling corner of New York City, Isabel Reed sat at her cluttered desk in a small pharmaceutical office, staring at her computer screen. At 24, she was just another intern, scraping by on a modest salary, her dreams overshadowed by a painful past. Her father, Henry Reed, had walked out on her family when she was a child, chasing wealth and leaving her mother to spiral into depression until she passed away. That loss left Isabel with a bitter taste for anyone with money, a wound she carried quietly beneath her simple clothes and guarded smile. Living with her grandmother, Evelyn Stone, in Brooklyn, she worked hard to make ends meet, especially now that Evelyn needed medical care. But today, something unexpected was about to change her life forever. It started with a text from her best friend, Jessica, who had a wild proposition. Jessica needed someone to sabotage a blind date she'd been roped into, and she was willing to pay $5,000 through a freelance app to make it happen. Isabel laughed at first, thinking it was a joke, but the money was real, and it could cover Evelyn's hospital bills, so she agreed, figuring it'd be a quick, harmless gig. The plan was simple: show up looking terrible, act outrageous, and scare the guy off. She rummaged through her closet, pulling out a faded sweatshirt, mismatched socks, and a pair of scuffed sneakers. With her hair in a messy bun and no makeup, she looked like she'd just rolled out of bed, which was exactly the point. That evening, Isabel arrived at a trendy Manhattan cafe, her heart pounding with a mix of nerves and amusement. She spotted her date across the room, Grayson Knight, a man in his late 20s with sharp features, dark hair, and an air of quiet confidence. He wore a tailored suit, sipping coffee like he belonged in a boardroom, not a blind date setup. Isabel smirked, ready to unleash her chaos. She plopped down across from him, slouching in her chair, and launched into her act. "Hey, I'm Isabel," she said loudly, grinning like a maniac. "Just so you know, I love hitting the bars every night, usually stumble home around 3. Oh, and chores, not my thing. You be cool with that, right? Sleeping alone while I'm out partying." Grayson raised an eyebrow, his lips twitching as if he was fighting a smile. Most guys would have bolted by now, but he leaned forward, resting his chin on his hand, studying her like she was a puzzle he wanted to solve. "Bars every night, huh?" he said smoothly. "Sounds like you're a free spirit. I can work with that." Isabel blinked, thrown off. He wasn't supposed to play along. She doubled down, tossing out more absurdities. "Yeah, and after we're married, don't expect me to cook or clean. I'll probably crash on the couch with takeout. You'd be fine with a wife like that, wouldn't you?" She expected him to cringe, to make an excuse and leave. Instead, Grayson chuckled, a low, warm sound that sent a shiver down her spine. "I think I'd manage," he replied. "In fact, I like your honesty. It's refreshing." Isabel's stomach twisted. This wasn't going according to plan. She'd met guys who'd run at the first sign of her quirks, but Grayson seemed intrigued, his hazel eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her squirm. Desperate to seal the deal and get out, she pushed harder. "Look, I'm not exactly a catch," she said, gesturing to her sloppy outfit. "I'm broke, messy, and I've got no fancy degree. You'd be better off rejecting me now." Grayson tilted his head, unfazed. Then, to her shock, he leaned across the table and said, "How about we skip the rejection and go straight to the good part? Marry me." The cafe noise faded as Isabel stared at him, mouth open. "What?" she sputtered. Grayson smiled, calm as ever. "I'm serious. Marry me. It doesn't have to be real, just a contract. I need someone to help me dodge a family situation, and you need money, right? I'll pay you $10,000 a month to play the part." Isabel's mind raced. This guy was either crazy or desperate, but $10,000 a month could change everything for her and Evelyn. She hesitated, searching his face for a catch, but all she saw was sincerity, or at least a convincing act of it. "Fine," she said finally, her voice shaky. "But this better not be a scam." Grayson pulled out a pen and a napkin, jotting down a quick agreement. "Sign here," he said, sliding it over. Isabel scribbled her name, her hand trembling as she handed it back. He tucked the napkin into his pocket, stood and offered his hand. "Deal's done, wife. Let's get out of here." She took his hand, dazed, as they left the cafe together. Outside, under the glow of New York's streetlights, Isabel stole a glance at him, wondering who this man really was. Little did she know, Grayson Knight wasn't just some random guy. He was the CEO of Knight Pharmaceuticals, a billionaire hiding in plain sight, and her life was about to turn upside down. A week after that bizarre blind date, Isabel Reed found herself standing in the doorway of a sleek Manhattan apartment, clutching a small suitcase. Grayson Knight had insisted they live together to make their fake marriage convincing, and though every instinct screamed at her to run, the promise of $10,000 a month kept her feet planted. The place was stunning, all glass walls and modern furniture, a far cry from her cramped Brooklyn bedroom at her grandmother Evelyn Stone's house. Grayson greeted her with a casual smile, handing her a key. "Welcome home, Isabel," he said, his voice smooth and steady. She nodded, unsure how to feel about this stranger who was now her husband. The first few days were awkward. Isabel stuck to her side of the apartment, avoiding Grayson as much as possible. He didn't push, just went about his routine, leaving early and coming back late. She assumed he was some mid-level manager, maybe in sales based on the way he dodged questions about work, but then little things started to shift. One morning she woke up to the smell of coffee and found a warm croissant on the kitchen counter with a note. "For you. Have a good day at work." She stared at it, confused. No one had done something like that for her since her mom died. Later that week, when Evelyn called about a leaking pipe, Grayson showed up in Brooklyn with a toolbox, rolling up his sleeves to fix it while Isabel watched, stunned. "You don't have to do this," she said, but he just shrugged. "I like fixing things. Besides, Evelyn's family now, right?" That night, back at the apartment, Isabel couldn't hold back her curiosity. They sat on the couch, a rare moment of stillness, and she asked, "Why are you so nice to me? This is just a contract, isn't it?" Grayson set down his glass of water, his hazel eyes meeting hers. "Maybe it started that way," he said softly, "but I like being around you. You're real, Isabel. Not many people are." Her chest tightened. She hadn't expected that. Hesitant, she opened up about her past, the words spilling out before she could stop them. "My dad left us when I was 6. He wanted money, a better life, whatever that means. My mom couldn't handle it. She got sick and never got better. I hate people like him, people who think wealth fixes everything." Grayson listened, his face unreadable, but his silence felt safe. "I'm sorry you went through that," he said finally. "Not everyone with money is like him, though." She scoffed, unconvinced, but his words lingered. Over the next few weeks, their walls began to crumble. Grayson brought her lunch at her internship, a tiny office in Midtown where she analyzed drug compounds. He'd sit with her, asking about her work, genuinely interested in her ideas. She caught herself smiling more, laughing at his dry humor, feeling a warmth she hadn't known in years. One evening, as they walked home through Central Park, she tripped over a root and he caught her, his hand steady on her arm. For a moment they stood there, closer than ever, and she thought he might kiss her. He didn't, just smiled and let go, but the air between them crackled. Isabel realized she was falling for him, contract or not, and it terrified her. What if he didn't feel the same? What if this was all a game? Her fears came crashing down at a company gala a month later. Isabel had been invited as a +1 by a coworker, unaware Grayson would be there. She wore a borrowed dress, feeling out of place among the suits and gowns. Then she saw him across the room, looking every bit the polished executive, shaking hands with big shots. A knot formed in her stomach. He hadn't mentioned this, any of it. During a break, she checked her phone and noticed an email notification on Grayson's laptop, left open on a table nearby. It was from his assistant, addressed to Mr. Knight, CEO of Knight Pharmaceuticals, detailing a multi-million-dollar deal. Her breath caught. CEO? Billionaire? The man she'd been living with? Spilling her heart to? Wasn't some manager, he was one of the richest men in New York. When Grayson found her moments later, she was trembling with anger. "You lied to me," she snapped, holding up the phone with the email still glowing on the screen. "You're not who you said you were. You're just like him, my dad, hiding behind money." Grayson's face fell, panic flickering in his eyes. Isabel, I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you everything. I was going to, I swear. I didn't want you to see me as some rich jerk. She shook her head, tears stinging. You don't get it. I trusted you, and you played me. This whole thing, the contract, it's over. I'm done. She turned to leave, her heart pounding, but Grayson grabbed her wrist gently. Please, he said, his voice raw. I'm not your father. I care about you more than you know. Give me a chance to prove it. Isabel froze, torn between the pain of betrayal and the sincerity in his plea. She'd seen the way he looked at her, the way he'd fixed Evelyn's pipe, the way he'd listened. Was that all fake? Or was there something real beneath the secrets? One chance, she said coldly, pulling her arm free. But if you lie again, I'm gone for good. Grayson nodded, relief washing over him, though the tension between them hung heavy. As they left the gala, Isabel glanced back at the glittering crowd, wondering what she'd just agreed to. She didn't know it yet, but Grayson's world was about to pull her in deeper, and the truth would test them both in ways neither could imagine. The morning after the gala, Isabel Reed woke up in Grayson Knight's Manhattan apartment with a heavy heart. His confession still echoed in her mind, the email branding him as CEO of Knight Pharmaceuticals burning behind her eyes. She'd given him one chance, but trust was fragile, and every glance at his tailored suits or the luxury around her felt like a reminder of the wealth she despised. Grayson sensed the distance. Over breakfast, he tried to lighten the mood, sliding a plate of pancakes her way. I'm still the guy who fixed your grandma's pipe, he said with a small smile. Isabel didn't reply, just picked at her food, her thoughts a tangle of doubt and hope. That afternoon, the tension took a back seat when a new figure stormed into their lives. Madeline Pierce arrived unannounced at the apartment, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. She was stunning, with auburn hair and a commanding presence, the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. Grayson, she said warmly, ignoring Isabel as she crossed the room to hug him. It's been too long. Isabel watched, her stomach twisting as Grayson returned the hug stiffly. Madeline, he said, stepping back. What are you doing here? Madeline smiled, pulling a worn leather bracelet from her purse. I heard you got married, thought I'd congratulate you and remind you of this. She dangled the bracelet, its faded beads glinting. From when I saved your life, remember? Isabel's eyes narrowed. Grayson's expression shifted, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. The kidnapping, he murmured, taking the bracelet. You kept this. Madeline nodded, her voice soft but pointed. Of course. I risked everything to get you out, and now you're with her? She glanced at Isabel, her gaze dripping with disdain. Some stand-in who doesn't even know you? Isabel stood, anger flaring. I'm not a stand-in, she snapped. I'm his wife. Madeline laughed, a sharp sound. Wife, please. Grayson and I have history. You're just a phase. Grayson stepped between them, his jaw tight. That's enough, Madeline. Isabel's not going anywhere. But the seed of doubt was planted, and Isabel couldn't shake the image of that bracelet, a relic of a past she wasn't part of. The next day, another shock hit. Henry Reed, Isabel's father, showed up at her office in Midtown. She hadn't seen him in 18 years, not since he walked out on her and her mom. He looked older, grayer, but his eyes held a guilt she didn't expect. Isabel, he said, his voice rough. I need to talk to you. She crossed her arms, cold. You've got nothing I want to hear. Henry sighed, pulling out a faded letter. It's about your mom. She left me, not the other way around. She made me promise to stay away, to keep you safe from some people I'd crossed. I only came back now because I found out Dorothy Blake, my second wife, faked your mom's will. She's trying to steal Reed Pharma, the company your mom built. Isabel took the letter, her hands shaking as she recognized her mother's handwriting. It confirmed everything. Her mom had divorced Henry to protect her, moving them to Brooklyn under a new name. Henry had stayed away, a coward's choice, but not the betrayal she'd always believed. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, voice breaking. Henry met her gaze. "Because I want to make it right. Dorothy and her daughter Chloe Vance, they're plotting to cut you out. You're the rightful heir." Before she could process it, her phone buzzed with a text from Grayson. "Meet me at Reed Pharma tonight. Something's up." That evening, Isabel arrived at Reed Pharma's sleek headquarters, still reeling from Henry's words. Grayson was waiting, his face grim. "There's a research competition tonight," he said. "Your team's presenting a new drug. I heard rumors someone's sabotaging it." The event was a big deal, a chance for Isabel to prove herself as more than an intern. She took the stage, explaining her compound with passion, her voice steady despite the crowd's whispers. Halfway through, a woman interrupted. Chloe Vance, her half-sister, strutted forward with a smug grin. "That data's stolen," Chloe announced, holding up a flash drive. "She plagiarized it from our lab. I've got proof." The room erupted in murmurs. Isabel froze, her mind racing. "That's a lie," she said, but Chloe waved the drive like a trophy. "Check it yourself. She's a fraud." Isabel's chest tightened, years of hard work crumbling in seconds. Then Grayson stepped up, his presence commanding silence. "I've got the real proof," he said, plugging a laptop into the projector. Security footage rolled, showing Isabel working late nights uploading her own data, while Chloe smirked in the background, planting fake files. "This is my wife's work," Grayson declared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Anyone who questions her answers to me." The crowd went quiet, Chloe's face paling as Grayson handed the evidence to the judges. They disqualified Chloe's claim, awarding Isabel the win. Applause broke out, but Isabel barely heard it. Grayson's words echoed, "My wife." He'd stood by her publicly, fiercely, in a way no one ever had. As they left the stage, she grabbed his arm. "Why'd you do that?" she asked, voice low. He looked at her, steady and sure. "Because you're worth it, Isabel, and I'm not losing you." Her heart skipped, a rush of warmth battling the doubts Madeline had stirred. She wanted to believe him, but Chloe's venomous glare from across the room promised more trouble. Later that night, Isabel sat with Henry at a diner, the letter between them. "Dorothy's ruthless," he warned. "She'll come after you harder now. Chloe, too." Isabel nodded, resolve hardening. "Let them try. I'm not running." Henry gave a faint smile, a glimmer of pride in his eyes. Back at the apartment, Grayson waited, his expression tense. "Madeline called," he said. "She's not backing off. Says I owe her." Isabel's stomach sank. "Do you?" she asked. He shook his head. "I don't know what to believe anymore. But you, Isabel, you're the one I want here." She studied him, torn between the bracelet's shadow and the man who just saved her dreams. Trouble was brewing, and it was only the beginning. The air in Grayson Knight's Manhattan apartment felt thick with unspoken words as Isabel Reed sat on the couch, staring at the leather bracelet Madeline Pierce had left behind. It sat on the coffee table like a taunt, a piece of a past she didn't share with Grayson. Since the gala and the R&D competition, their bond had grown, but Madeline's claim and Dorothy Blake's threats loomed over them. Grayson paced nearby, his phone buzzing with messages he ignored. "She won't let this go," he said, rubbing his jaw. "Madeline's always been stubborn." Isabel looked up, her voice steady despite the unease in her chest. "What does she want from you?" Grayson stopped, meeting her gaze. "Me," he said simply. "She thinks I owe her my life." Before Isabel could press further, her own phone rang. It was Henry Reed, her father, his voice urgent. "Isabel, watch your back. Dorothy's furious about the competition. She's planning something. I can feel it." Isabel gripped the phone, her resolve tightening. "I can handle her," she said. Though doubt gnawed at her, she hung up, turning to Grayson. "Dorothy's coming for me. Henry's sure of it." Grayson's eyes darkened. "Then we stick together. No risks." She nodded, grateful for his solid presence. But the storm was already closing in. 2 days later it hit. Isabel was leaving Reed Pharma late, the New York streets quiet under a drizzle. She'd stayed to finish her report, texting Grayson she'd be home soon. As she crossed a dimly lit alley to her car, a van screeched to a stop beside her. Two men in hoods jumped out, grabbing her before she could scream. She fought, kicking and clawing, but a cloth pressed over her mouth sent her world spinning into darkness. When she woke, she was in a damp, abandoned warehouse on the city's outskirts, hands tied behind her back. Dorothy Blake stood before her, a cold smile on her face. "You should have stayed out of my way," Dorothy said, her voice venomous. "Reed Pharma's mine, and Chloe's the heir, not you." Isabel glared, struggling against the ropes. "You won't get away with this. Henry knows what you're doing." Dorothy laughed, stepping closer. "Henry's a fool, and your precious Grayson won't find you here." But Dorothy underestimated him. Grayson had tracked Isabel's phone, a precaution he'd insisted on after the competition. Within hours, he burst into the warehouse, his face a mask of fury. "Let her go," he roared, charging at the hired thugs. A fight broke out, fists flying in the dim light. Grayson took down one man, but the second pulled a knife, slashing at him. Isabel screamed as Grayson stumbled, blood staining his shirt from a deep gash on his side. He gritted his teeth, tackling the thug to the ground, knocking him out cold. Dorothy fled as Grayson staggered to Isabel, cutting her ropes with a pocket knife. "You're hurt," she gasped, pressing her hands to his wound. He winced but managed a weak smile. "I'm fine. Just get out of here." She shook her head, tears welling. "Not without you." They limped out together, collapsing into his car as he called for help. At the hospital, doctors stitched Grayson up, warning he'd need weeks to recover. Dorothy spread a rumor he'd lost a kidney, hoping to scare Isabel into backing off, but tests proved it false, just a vicious lie. Isabel stayed by his bedside, holding his hand as he slept, her heart aching with a love she couldn't deny. The danger wasn't over. A week later, Madeline Pierce struck. Isabel was visiting Evelyn in Brooklyn when a text came from an unknown number, a video of Grayson, bound and gagged in a warehouse, flames licking the walls. Another figure lay nearby, unconscious. Madeline. A voice crackled through. "Two women, one choice, Grayson, pick fast." Isabel's blood ran cold. She called Grayson's assistant, tracing the signal to a site near the Hudson River. She raced there, arriving as Grayson broke free, coughing in the smoke. He saw her and ran forward, but Madeline's voice stopped him. "Save me, Grayson," she pleaded, waking just in time. "You owe me." Isabel stood frozen, the fire spreading. Grayson looked between them, his face torn. Then he turned to Isabel, pulling her into his arms. "You," he said, his voice hoarse. "It's always been you." He dragged her toward the exit, shouting for Madeline to follow. She didn't, collapsing as the flames closed in. Firefighters arrived, pulling Madeline out barely alive. But Grayson's choice was clear. Outside, he held Isabel tight, both trembling. "I don't owe her anything," he said. "Not anymore." Madeline, burned and bitter, glared from the ambulance. "I didn't save you," she spat. "I saw it happen and took the credit. That bracelet? I stole it." The confession hit Isabel like a wave. Memories flooded back, jagged pieces of a childhood she'd buried. She was 8, on a trip with her mom in upstate New York. A man had grabbed her and another boy, Grayson, locking them in a shed. She'd been terrified, blindfolded, but she'd slipped a note under the door, begging for help. "Run," she'd whispered to the boy, staying behind as he escaped. The trauma had blurred it all, but now she saw his face, those same hazel eyes. "It was me," she whispered, clutching Grayson. "I saved you." He stared, realization dawning. "All this time," he said, voice breaking. "I've been looking for you." They sank to the ground, the warehouse burning behind them. Isabel's mind spun, connecting the dots. Madeline had witnessed the rescue, stolen the bracelet from the scene, and built a lie to bind Grayson to her. Now, exposed, she'd lost everything. Grayson cupped Isabel's face, his touch gentle despite the blood and soot. "I almost lost you again," he said. "Never again." She leaned into him, the fire's heat fading as their past snapped into place. But questions lingered. Dorothy was still out there. and the truth about her mother's death gnawed at Isabel. She glanced at Grayson, his strength anchoring her. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The smoke from the warehouse fire still clung to Isabel Reed's clothes as she sat in a New York hospital waiting room, Grayson Knight's hand resting in hers. His side was bandaged, his breathing steady now, but the weight of their shared past pressed heavy on her chest. She'd saved him as a child, a truth buried under years of trauma, only to find him again through a fake marriage turned real. Madeline Pierce's confession had shattered her lies, leaving her burned and defeated, but Dorothy Blake remained a shadow over their fragile peace. Isabel squeezed Grayson's hand, her resolve hardening. "We need to end this," she whispered. He nodded, eyes fierce despite the pain. "Whatever it takes." The next morning, Isabel met Henry Reed at his modest apartment in Queens. He'd been digging into Dorothy's schemes since the R&D competition, and now he had a lead. "Your mom's car accident," he said, spreading old files across the table. "It wasn't random. I found a report about a drug in her system. Something subtle, easy to miss." Isabel's pulse quickened. "You think Dorothy did it?" Henry nodded grimly. "She wanted Reed Pharma. Your mom was in the way." Isabel clenched her fists, anger surging. "She's behind more than that. Grayson and I found a link to Greg Thompson, a guy who worked for her. He died in a crash too, same pattern." Henry's face paled. "Greg was her fixer. If we can prove it, she's done." Grayson, recovering but relentless, called in favors from Knight Pharmaceuticals' legal team. They tracked down a retired coroner who'd handled both cases, a man named Paul Grayson remembered from a past deal. Over coffee in Midtown, Paul confirmed their suspicions. "Traces of a rare sedative in both victims," he said, handing over faded reports. "Someone staged those accidents, used the drug to mask it. Took me years to connect the dots." Isabel's stomach churned. "Dorothy hired a hitman," she said, "and covered it with poison." Grayson took the files, his jaw tight. "We've got her." The evidence piled up over days. Isabel and Grayson uncovered bank records showing payments from Dorothy to a known enforcer, matched to the crash dates. A breakthrough came when Henry found a recorded call Greg had made to Dorothy, threatening to expose her unless she paid more. That night, he died. "She silenced him," Isabel said, playing the tape for Grayson in their apartment. "Just like she silenced my mom." Grayson pulled her close, his voice low. "We'll make her pay, Isabel. For all of it." They took everything to the police, who raided Dorothy's penthouse the next day. She screamed as they cuffed her, Chloe Vance watching in horror nearby. "You can't prove anything," Dorothy spat, but the files and tape said otherwise. At the station, a DNA test Henry demanded dropped the final bomb. Chloe and Madeline weren't his daughters, they were Greg's, a secret Dorothy had buried to secure her grip on Reed Pharma. Chloe collapsed, sobbing, as Madeline, still recovering from burns, stared blankly from a holding cell. Dorothy's empire crumbled, her crimes laid bare, 2 murders, fraud, and a lifetime of deceit. Isabel faced her one last time through the glass. "You took my mom," she said, voice steady. "Now you've lost everything." Dorothy smirked, unrepentant. "You'll never be enough for that company." Isabel walked away, leaving her to rot. With Dorothy gone, Isabel took the helm of Reed Pharma. Henry handed her the keys in a quiet ceremony, his eyes wet with pride. "Your mom would have loved this," he said. She hugged him, a tentative step toward healing. Grayson stood by her side, his support unwavering as they merged Reed Pharma with Knight Pharmaceuticals, a powerhouse born from their shared strength. Weeks later, they flew to San Francisco for a new chapter. In a sunlit chapel overlooking the bay, Isabel walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, Grayson waiting in a black suit, his smile brighter than the ocean beyond. Catherine Knight, Grayson's mother, sat in the front row, her face glowing with a health Isabel had helped restore. Years of depression had faded since Isabel shared a new antidepressant she'd developed, a gift from daughter-in-law to mother-in-law. Catherine clasped Isabel's hands after the vows, tears shining. "You saved my son twice," she said. "Thank you." Henry stood beside them, reconciled with his past, a family rebuilt from ashes. The priest called for the vows. "Do you, Grayson, take Isabel in sickness and health, for richer or poorer?" Grayson's voice rang clear. "I do." Isabel echoed, "I do," her heart full as they kissed, applause filling the air. The reception spilled onto a terrace under the stars, laughter and music blending with the waves. Isabel and Grayson slipped away later, boarding a plane to Hawaii for their honeymoon. On a quiet beach, Isabel dropped her hat in the sand, and a stranger picked it up, offering his number with a grin. "Sorry," she said, smiling back at Grayson. "I just got married." The man shrugged and left, and Grayson pulled her close, pretending to scowl. "He's lucky I didn't deck him," he teased. Isabel laughed, pushing him playfully. "Jealous much?" He caught her hand, kissing her knuckles. "Always." "You're mine, Isabel Reed Knight." She leaned into him, the sunset painting them gold, a love forged through fire now unbreakable. As the sun dipped below the horizon on that Hawaiian beach, Isabel Reed Knight and Grayson Knight stood hand in hand, the waves lapping at their feet. Their journey had been anything but simple, a wild ride from a sabotaged blind date in New York to a love strong enough to withstand fire, betrayal, and buried truths. It started with a napkin contract in a Manhattan cafe. A deal born of convenience. $5,000 for Isabel to scare Grayson off, and $10,000 a month for her to play his wife and dodge his family's plans. Neither expected their hearts to rewrite the terms. Isabel, scarred by a father who chased wealth over family, found in Grayson a man who chose her over everything, even when his billionaire status threatened to tear them apart. Their story unfolded across New York's towering skyline and Brooklyn's quiet streets, where Grayson fixed pipes for Evelyn Stone and brought Isabel breakfast, proving love in the small moments. But the path wasn't smooth. Madeline Pierce crashed in with a stolen bracelet and a lie, claiming a past that wasn't hers, while Dorothy Blake wove a web of murder and greed to steal Reed Pharma. Isabel faced kidnappings, a burning warehouse, and the sting of doubt. Yet Grayson stood by her, bleeding for her, choosing her over Madeline in a blaze that could have ended them both. The truth of their childhood, Isabel's forgotten rescue of Grayson from a kidnapper's shed, tied them together in a way fate couldn't undo. Through it all, they fought not just for each other, but for justice. Dorothy's crimes unraveled, her hired hitman and subtle poisons exposed as the tools that took Isabel's mother and Greg Thompson. With Henry Reed's help, Isabel reclaimed her legacy, turning Reed Pharma into a force alongside Grayson's Knight Pharmaceuticals. Their wedding in San Francisco sealed it, a celebration of love and family reborn, with Catherine Knight's smile and Henry's quiet pride lighting the day. From a fake marriage to a honeymoon kiss under a Hawaiian sunset, they'd built something real, something lasting. Looking back, their love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect beginnings. It was messy, forged in chaos, tempered by sacrifice. Isabel didn't need Grayson's billions, she needed his heart. The one that raced when he pulled her from flames, the one that vowed "I do" in a chapel by the sea. Grayson didn't need a polished heiress, he needed Isabel, the woman who'd saved him twice, first as a scared little girl with a note, then as the partner who stood tall against every storm. Together they proved that love doesn't demand wealth or flawless pasts, it thrives on trust, on two souls willing to risk everything for each other. Their story carries a message worth holding on to. Love isn't always easy. It's not a fairy tale with a neat bow. Sometimes it starts with a lie, a contract, a blind date gone wrong. But when it's real, it endures, it fights, it heals. Isabel and Grayson found each other in the unlikeliest of places, their bond growing stronger with every trial. Maybe you felt that too, a connection that defies the odds, a person who sees you when no one else does. That's the magic they discovered, the kind that says destiny might have been at work long before they knew it. So here's the takeaway. Love doesn't need to be perfect, it just needs to be true. It's about finding someone who'll stand in the fire with you, who'll choose you when the world's falling apart. Isabel and Grayson's tale reminds us that even in our broken moments, we can build something beautiful, something worth keeping. They started as strangers in a cafe, ended as soulmates on a beach, and every step between was a testament to what's possible when you believe. Now it's your turn. What part of their journey hit you the hardest? Was it Grayson rushing into that warehouse, blood staining his shirt to save Isabel? Or maybe the moment they realized their pasts were intertwined, a rescue from childhood binding them forever? Drop a comment below. Let me know what moved you, what made your heart race or your eyes tear up. If this story warmed your soul, hit that subscribe button. Join us for more tales of love that conquer all. Isabel and Grayson found their happily ever after. And who knows? Maybe the next story will spark something in you too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.